Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Crawl, starring Kea Scodelario and Barry Pepper, directed by Alexandre Aja. Now, I did go to theaters for this, and what do I think? Well, let's see if it still remains the same. Let's get into it. A massive storm comes in Florida, and we get swimmer competitor Haley, played by Kea Scodelario, whom I reviewed in the Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, and the Maze Runner trilogy. And she's going to be in that new Resident Evil reboot that I'm going to review. As she comes in second on the swimming race and gets a call from her sister Beth and to ask if their father Dave, played by Barry Pepper, is alright. As she drives to the stormy section of town to get her father as he's trapped in his own house, and Haley finds Sugar the dog and sees Dave is depressed and gets the dog out of there and goes to another house, as we don't know how much about Haley or Dave, except Dave is an alcoholic. And Haley wants to be in the swimming team, and I like the way we just go into the plot of the movie right away, and we learn a little bit about the characters, as I do like these two as father and daughter, but the plot is simple, as it's about surviving a storm with alligators in the water, as they're dangerous creatures, or crocodiles, or it could be one or the other, I couldn't really tell you. Sugar senses Dave is in a small basement, and Haley goes down there to find Dave is successful, as Dave is bleeding, and Haley has no choice but to try to take Dave to the hospital and drags him to the small basement, and they're almost out until an alligator appears out of the blue, which did scare the shit out of me. And Sugar tries to warn them to get out of there. There's an alligator in there, and both Haley and Dave are trapped and for now. And luckily, Dave wakes up and sees Haley and wonders why the fuck is she there to begin with. And she tries to get her phone, which is a bad idea, particularly when there's an alligator there to begin with. And some of the choices being made are laughable, sure, but I'm having a rather an entertaining time with the movie. The alligator grabs Haley by the foot and drags her as she stabs it with the screwdriver, with the second one appearing and fights both of them and stabs one in the eyeball, which makes sense as it can no longer see, but if it can have sense, sound, and fear with the prey, while Dave is worried for if Haley is dead, but luckily she's still alive and gets the same cut Dave got when we found him earlier in the film. But what bothered me was how she survived both alligators, but what makes a difference is she has the survivor skills, to be fair. And this movie is a B movie where you'll have to turn off your brain. Dave struggles to put pressure on the wound as he does scream in pain, and while Haley sees a couple of people outside on a boat stealing an ATM and other things from the store across the street, and she tries to call for help, but unfortunately the alligators make them bleed and die, which is a typical horror film, well, with alligators, and I do like that. Dave figures out a way to get Haley out of the basement, and she tries to get out of with the help from Sugar, as she's worried about both Haley and Dave, while Haley and Dave call for the police, led by Wayne, who happened to be in the movie earlier, showing up at the right time to find Haley and Dave, and they try to call for Wayne while their engine is stuck with something from the underwater. And the next thing I thought I thought at shutting at the TV look in the small basement, and he does, as the other officer is distracted while Wayne calls for his help, and the alligator grabs him, and I'm thinking, yep, he did. And I knew it was coming as soon as he arrived, because how can he survive that, as it felt predictable? As Dave tells Haley he's been selfish, as he was the reason she became a swimmer to begin with, as he believes he doesn't have a second chance. And that is great. And is that the greatest acting in the world? No, but it makes me care for the characters. Haley swims to find a way to out of the small basement while Dave traps one of the alligators from coming to either himself or Haley, Well, she can't get out from the stairs and will use a pipe way out as she's small enough to do so and goes in there. And I like how intense this movie is at this point. Haley finds a gun and shoots at an alligator while it bites her arm and it kills it off. And that's one down and one to go. And she survived the bite on the arm as she swims and sees the other alligator swimming by and sneaking by the alligator and gets out of the water and tries to call for help but isn't successful and breaks her way in the house and breaks the wood and lets Dave survive. And at first I thought he was dead, but he comes back alive thanks to Haley pounding his heart alive, which is true, but honestly I wish he died at that point because he's been in the water for too long. They get out of the house while the street is in water as they try to get on the boat. An alligator comes by them and Haley swims to get on the boat, and as they almost got out, but nope, they're right back where they started, which sort of feels typical of horror these days. But I'm having a good time thus far with the plot. They tried not to get eaten by the alligator like they were trying earlier, and I swear to God, at this point I thought Sugar the dog was dead because she's swimming around with the alligator in the water, and I was very worried for the doggy. While Haley calls for help on the walkie-talkie, and Dave tries to find the alligator, but his arm gets caught by the alligator as it breaks Dave's arm and goes after Haley as she's trapped in the bathtub and eventually gets out while trapping the alligator and catches up with Dave and Sugar as they go to the roof and trapping the monster, was cliche for sure. Haley calls the helicopter to come to the roof of the house they're at, but they can't see them until Dave gets up there, while Haley is caught by an alligator as Haley kills the alligator and gets to the roof, and and Haley wait for the helicopter to come save them, as well as Sugar and Dave pointing out the helicopter. And Haley calls for it by shooting the flare gun, and they'll come for them off screen. As the climax was fun, it was a fun time at the movies, as at the end of the day, it was entertaining. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 7.4 out of 10. The movie is intense, with likable characters, with the script that feels like a B movie, and some of the choices are silly for sure, but it's fun as this is a fun movie. The plot is simple as it's a good time at the movies, and there were times the movie got cliche, but at the same time, I did like the character, and was glad they survived by the end of the movie. I recommend you guys check this out and have a good time with it, as this feels B-movie material, as it has fun for damn sure. And at the end of the time, I'm having an entertaining time. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and until then, come on, you son of a beach!